polished obsidian floors of the Galactic Senate chamber reflected the shifting holograms of 1,000 species. Delegates in flowing chromatic robes murmured in their native tongues, their various appendages gesturing toward the central dais where the fate of civilizations was decided. Among them, Captain Ryan Blake stood rigid in his simple black uniform, the only human in a sea of alien superiority. Ambassador Krelix of the Zephyrian Dominion unfurled his bioluminescent frills, a sign of amusement among his kind. His 4 eyes locked onto Blake as he addressed the assembly. The great Defense Pact requires strength beyond primitive ballistics and chemical explosives, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Humanity's so-called nuclear weapons are little more than firecrackers compared to our antimatter arrays. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Commander Vexis of the Vorak Collective clacked his chitinous claws together in agreement. Their ships lack proper shielding. Their soldiers die to simple radiation exposure. Why should we waste resources protecting a species that can't even survive on half the Federation's worlds? Blake's fingers tightened around his datapad. The screen cracked under the pressure, but his face remained impassive. He'd expected this. 3 years of diplomatic missions had taught him how the galaxy viewed humanity, soft, fragile, doomed to extinction without the Federation's protection. Professor Zixel, the Octavian tactician, floated forward on her anti-grav disc. Her 8 tentacles manipulated the holographic display, pulling up footage of humanity's last major conflict. "Observe their World War II," she said, magnifying grainy images of mushroom clouds. "This is the pinnacle of their warfare. Chemical reactions and fission. We phased out such barbarism 10,000 cycles ago." More laughter. A Cerelion delegate pulsed with derisive colors. "They still use projectile weapons. My larval young could design better armaments." Blake waited for the noise to die down. When he spoke, his voice cut through the chamber like a knife. "You're right," he said, drawing surprised glances. "Our nukes are primitive. Our ships lack your shielding, but you're missing one critical detail." He tapped his broken datapad, sending a file to the central display. "We won every war we ever fought." The holograms shifted to show human history, Waterloo, Stalingrad, the Pacific Theater, scenes of mud, blood, and broken bodies. No fancy antimatter, no energy shields, just steel, gunpowder, and the will to keep fighting when logic said we should surrender. Blake pointed to the image of a frozen soldier at Chosen Reservoir. That man held his position at degrees until his fingers turned black. How many of your warriors would do the same? Krelix's frills stiffened. "Bravery means nothing against orbital bombardment, does it?" Blake activated another file. The screen showed classified Federation battle records, every major engagement for the past century. "We've studied your wars. Your tactics are predictable, your formations rigid." He zoomed in on the Battle of Zentha Prime. "See this flanking maneuver, used it 12 times in the last 50 years. We wrote an algorithm that predicts your fleet movements with fey accuracy." The chamber fell silent. Vexis's mandibles twitched. "You've been spying on military exercises? Call it academic interest," Blake smirked. "While you were laughing at our primitive technology, we've been decoding every transmission, every battle report. Know what we found." He leaned forward. "You're not as advanced as you think, just complacent." Krelix slammed a taloned hand on the podium. "Enough, the vote stands. Humanity is excluded from the Great Defense Pact. Let them face the Scourge alone when it comes." The holographic tally appeared overhead, a unanimous decision, as expected. Blake didn't flinch as the results flashed red across his face. He simply straightened his uniform and turned to leave. As he reached the arched doorway, Zixel called after him. "Captain Blake, what will your people do now?" Blake didn't look back. "What we've always done, Professor, prepare for war." Outside in the glittering corridor, Blake finally allowed himself a smile. He opened a secure channel to Earth. "They took the bait," he murmured. "Initiate Prometheus protocol." Somewhere in the dark between stars, Human ships powered up weapons the galaxy had never seen. The dim glow of flickering screens cast long shadows across the bunker's reinforced walls. Lieutenant Lisa Hayes adjusted her headset, the hum of cooling fans the only sound in the otherwise silent chamber. Rows of analysts worked in hushed urgency, their faces illuminated by streams of encrypted data. Across the table, Scholar Yithlix hovered, his floating orbs darting between screens. The Cerellian's telepathic aura prickled with unease. "This is impossible," he murmured, his voice a whisper of static through the translation implant. "These are classified Vorak fleet deployments, battle plans from the last Scourge engagement. How did your species acquire them?" Hayes smirked, tapping a command into her console. The central hologram shifted, displaying a star map littered with crimson markers. "We didn't acquire them, Yithlix, we predicted them." The Cerellian's orbs pulsed violet. "Shock. Prediction algorithms of this accuracy do not exist. Not even the Zephyrian quantum thinkers. Meet Prometheus," Hayes interrupted. The hologram dissolved, reforming into a swirling fractal core of light. "Earth's first military AI built to simulate every possible engagement scenario. And guess what? Your Federation's tactics are rigid." Yithlix recoiled as the hologram replayed the Battle of Cygnus IX, a famous Federation victory. Only now, crimson arrows slashed through the formation, highlighting gaps in the Vorak flank. "Your dreadnoughts cluster when under fire," Hayes said. "Standard doctrine says to shield the flagship. Prometheus calculates a phase success rate if an enemy strikes here instead." She pointed. The simulation exploded as a single railgun round crippled 3 ships. That engagement was decades ago. Yithlix stammered, and yet Hayes pulled up another file. "Your fleets still use the same formation, right down to the escort spacing." She leaned forward. "Tell me, Scholar, how many warships did the Federation lose against the Scourge last year?" Yithlix hesitated. 214. 237, Hayes corrected. "Because the Scourge adapted, we adapted, and you," she gestured at the hologram, "you're still fighting the last war." A chime sounded. Hayes tapped her earpiece. "Go ahead." Captain Blake's voice crackled through. "Status update, Lieutenant. Prometheus just finished the final simulations, sir. The Vorak's new invincible dreadnought. Turns out it's got a very sensitive reactor manifold." Blake's chuckle was dark. "Send the data to Mars Command and Hayes." "Yes, sir. Make sure our guest understands exactly what he's witnessing." Hayes turned back to Yithlix. The Cerellian's orbs had dimmed to a sickly yellow. "You've been analyzing us for how long?" "Since first contact," Hayes said simply. "While your council debated whether humans were worth a seat at the table, we were studying you every battle, every treaty, every mistake." She swiped her hand through the hologram, pulling up Earth's defense grid. "You think we're primitive, that we lack meaningful contributions." Her smile was razor thin. "We've been preparing for this war since before your ancestors crawled out of the cosmic dust." Yithlix's voice trembled. "This is insanity. If the Council knew, they don't." Hayes cut in. "And they won't. Not until it's too late." She leaned closer. "Here's the thing about humans, Scholar. We don't bluff. When we say we're ready, we mean it." The Cerellian's orbs flickered toward the door, where 2 armored Marines stood silently. Hayes followed his gaze. "Oh, don't worry, you're not a prisoner." She handed him a data crystal. "Consider this a courtesy, proof that we could have crushed your fleets years ago, but we didn't." Yithlix took the crystal with trembling appendages. "Why show me this?" "Because someone needs to warn them," Hayes said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And you're going to deliver the message. Tell the Council, tell Krellix, that humanity doesn't beg for a place at the table." She tapped the crystal. "We build our own." The Marines stepped aside as the door hissed open. Yithlix hesitated, his orbs locked on Hayes. "You're making a grave mistake." Hayes just smiled. "Funny, that's exactly what the Vorak said before Cygnus I." The door sealed behind him, Hayes exhaled, rubbing her temples. One of the analysts glanced up. Think hell run to the council. Hope so, Hayes muttered. Blake wants them rattled. She reactivated the hologram, watching as Prometheus simulated the coming battle. The real one. Crimson markers dissolved under waves of blue human fleets, human tactics, human victory. She tapped her earpiece again. Mars Command, this is Intel 1. Package delivered. They'll know we're coming now. Blake's reply was a growl. Good, let them fear it. The hologram flickered, displaying Earth's final message to the Federation, a single phrase flashing in bold. Welcome to the war. The void of the Centauri expanse stretched endlessly, a silent graveyard of dead stars and colder ambitions. Admiral Durkan of the Vorak Starfleet lounged in his command throne, his chitinous fingers drumming against the armrest. The holographic display before him showed a single human cruiser, USN Defiance, a speck against the might of his armada. Pathetic, Durkan hissed, his voice like grinding stone. They send one ship. His tactical officer, a younger Vorak with bioluminescent veins, pulsing in amusement, nodded. Scans confirm. No backup, primitive propulsion, minimal shielding. Their weapons are unregistered. Durkan's mandibles spread in a predator's grin. Then let us teach these softkin why the Federation excluded them. He raised a claw. All batteries, lock on. Reduce that insult to slag. Aboard the Defiance, Ensign Jake Morrison clenched his fists around the flight controls. The Vorak fleet filled the view screen, 20 dreadnoughts, their silver hulls gleaming like knives in the dark. His crew was silent. No prayers, no panic. Just the steady hum of the ship's core and the quiet beeping of targeting locks painting their hull. Ensign, Captain Hale's voice crackled over the comm. You know your orders. Morrison exhaled. Aye, Captain. His fingers danced across the console, inputting the final codes. The ship's AI, a smooth feminine voice, responded. Ragnarok protocol engaged. Warp core destabilization in T-minus 60 seconds. Behind him, Lieutenant Chen swore. They really gave us a one-way ticket, huh? Morrison smirked. Best damn fireworks show in history. The Vorak fleet opened fire. Particle beams lanced toward the Defiance, enough firepower to crack a moon. Then, the beams splintered, scattering harmlessly against a sudden shimmering barrier. Durkan shot upright. What was that? His sensor officer's claws trembled. Unknown energy signature, their shields. They shouldn't have shields that strong. Morrison watched the Vorak's confusion with grim satisfaction. The Defiance wasn't just a cruiser, it was a Trojan horse. Every inch of its hull hid reverse, engineered Federation tech, upgraded with human adaptations. The shield, a stolen Zeperian design, jury-rigged to overload and reflect energy. 30 seconds, the AI chimed. Durkan snarled. All ships focus fire, destroy them. The Vorak unleashed everything, missiles, plasma gravitic torpedoes. The Defiance shuddered but held, its reinforced frame groaning under the assault. Alarms blared. A console exploded, showering Morrison with sparks. He didn't flinch. 10 seconds. Chen grabbed his shoulder. Jake, don't, Morrison said, eyes locked on the view screen. We knew the price. The Defiance's warp core reached critical mass, space ripped. The ship vanished in a flash of blue, then reappeared inside the Vorak formation, its hull splitting apart in a storm of unleashed energy. The resulting shockwave wasn't just an explosion. It was a hyperspace rupture, a tear in reality itself. 3 Vorak dreadnoughts disintegrated instantly, their atoms unraveling. 2 more spun wildly, their gravity drives failing as the rift consumed them. Durkan's flagship rocked violently, its shields buckling. Report, Durkan bellowed. Admiral, the human ship. The sensor officer's voice broke. They turned their warp core into a bomb. Silence filled the bridge. Durkan stared at the expanding void where his fleet had been. No species in the Federation had ever dared weaponize hyperspace. The risks were too great. The consequences unpredictable, yet the humans had, and they'd calculated it perfectly. Morrison's last transmission crackled across all frequencies, his voice eerily calm. Message to the Galactic Federation: you banned us from your wargames. So we made our own rules. Then static. Durkhan sank back into his throne, his carapace suddenly too heavy. The remaining Vorak ships drifted, their commanders too stunned to speak. One cruiser, one human cruiser, had just wiped out a third of his fleet. And as the shock faded, a terrible realization settled over him. This wasn't a defeat. It was a warning. The Senate chamber erupted into chaos. Holographic displays flickered wildly, replaying the Defiance's final moments. The blinding flash as the human cruiser tore through 3 Vorak dreadnoughts, like a bullet through wet paper. Alien delegates shouted over each other, their voices a cacophony of panic and disbelief. Ambassador Krellick's frills flared crimson, his claws digging into the polished obsidian table. "This is impossible," he hissed. "No species sacrifices their own ships like that." Professor Zixel's tentacles trembled as she studied the tactical readouts. The Octavian's usually calm, analytical voice wavered. They didn't just sacrifice it, they engineered it. That warp core destabilization was precise, mathematically perfect. Her 4 eyes locked onto the frozen image of the Defiance's wreckage, humans weaponized hyperspace. A Vorak admiral slammed his fist on the table, his exoskeleton plates rattling. "Then we burn their worlds. They've declared war on the entire Federation." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Krellick's activated the central holodisplay, his voice dripping with forced calm. "Captain Blake, you will order your forces to stand down immediately, surrender all military assets, and Earth will be granted protectorate status under the feed." Crackled. Blake's face appeared, his expression ice-cold behind him. The bridge of the USN Atlantica hummed with activity. "Protectorate status?" he barked a laugh. "You think we're asking for permission?" With a flick of his wrist, Blake split the screen. A new feed appeared, Pluto's orbit, where 5 massive human fleets materialized from stealth, dreadnoughts coated in black adaptive plating, their railguns humming with charge. Krellick's frills went pale. "You banned us from your wargames," Blake said, his voice low. "Called us primitive, said we had nothing to contribute." He leaned forward. "Now you'll learn why that was a mistake." The chamber fell silent. Even the Vorak admiral hesitated. Then the alarms blared. A junior Cerelion officer burst in, his floating orbs wide with panic. "Fleetmaster Zira's armada. They've engaged the humans at Sol. Initial reports indicate." The holodisplay switched again, this time to live footage. 1,000 Zeperian warships darkened Earth's skies, their ion cannons glowing as they prepared to glass the surface. Blake didn't flinch. "Watch closely, Ambassador." The sky ignited hidden orbital platforms, camouflaged as asteroids, unfolded in unison. Magnetic coils hummed to life, and a storm of tungsten rods streaked upward at relativistic speeds. Zira's flagship, the Pride of Xiphus, took the first hit. The rod punched clean through its quantum shielding, then the hull, then the reactor core. The explosion lit up the night side of Earth like a second sun. Krellick stumbled back. Those are illegal. Kinetic bombardment violates the Geneva Suggestions." Blake smirked. "We read them. Then we improved them." The feed split once more. Ground level, Berlin, Tokyo, New York. Zeperian shock troops poured from drop pods, their plasma rifles charging, only to be met by human marines in armored exoskeletons. Sergeant Ava Cross led the counterattack, her kinetic lance shredding through alien armor like it was cardboard. A Zeperian commander roared, raising his blade. Cross grabbed his wrist and crushed it in her powered grip. "You dare," the alien choked. Cross head butted him. His helmet cracked. "Yeah," she said. "We dare." Back in the Senate, Zixel's voice was barely a whisper. "They were waiting for this. They wanted us to attack." Blake's smile was razor thin. Now you're getting it. Krelik's claws twitched toward the emergency comms. You'll die for this. Human, the Federation has millions of ships. Blake crossed his arms. And how many of them are left unguarded? The question hung in the air like a blade. Zixel was the first to understand. Her tentacles went slack. The Scourge, the Eastern Front. Blake nodded. While you've been playing politics, we've been studying them, their tactics, their weaknesses. He tapped a command into his console. A star map appeared. The Scourge's advance, halted at the Cygnus Reach. Human ships marked in red, intercepting every assault. We've been fighting your war for you, and winning. Krelik's frills flattened in horror. You knew the Scourge would attack the moment you pulled fleets back to deal with us. Blake shrugged. Basic strategy, divide and conquer. The Senate dissolved into panic. Delegates screamed for reinforcements, for ceasefires, for anything. Blake let them stew. Then he raised a hand. Silence fell. You have 1 hour, he said. Recall your fleets, stand down, or we'll show you what real war looks like. The feed cut. In the quiet that followed, Zixel stared at the blank screen. We never banned them for being weak, she murmured. We banned them because we were afraid. Krelix didn't argue. For the first time in his life, the great Superian diplomat had nothing to say. The sky over Earth turned black with the shadows of 1,000 warships. Fleetmaster Zira's Superian armada blotted out the sun, their sleek silver hulls bristling with ion cannons and plasma lances. Troop carriers descended like locusts toward Berlin, Tokyo, New York, each city lit by the eerie glow of alien targeting systems. Inside the ruins of Berlin's last standing bunker, Sergeant Ava Cross tightened the straps of her power armor. The suit hissed as it sealed, hydraulic servos whining to life. Around her, a dozen Marines did the same, their faces grim beneath blackened visors. Listen up, maggots, Cross barked. The lizards think this is a surrender party? Let's show them it's a funeral. A Superian voice crackled over the comms, deep, guttural, dripping with arrogance. Human defenders, lay down your weapons. Your species is now property of the Cross. Flick the channel closed. Yeah. We've heard the speech. Outside, the first wave of shock troops hit the ground. 6-foot, tall reptilian warriors in shimmering combat armor, their plasma rifles humming with green energy. They moved in perfect formation, just like the simulations. Too perfect, Cross grinned. Activate Mjolnir protocol. Above the city, hidden orbital railguns, buried in debris fields and disguised as asteroids, spun to life. Magnetic coils charged with a whine that shook the air. Then the sky screamed. A hypersonic tungsten rod punched through Zira's flagship like a bullet through wet paper. The explosion lit up the stratosphere, molten debris raining down in a firestorm. 2 more dreadnoughts followed, their hulls crumpling like tin cans. The Superian troops froze, their flawless advance shattered into chaos. Cross didn't wait. She kicked open the bunker door, her kinetic lance humming in her grip. Marines, advance. The power armor made her faster than anything the aliens had seen. She blurred across the battlefield, her lance carving through Superian armor like it was cardboard. One warrior raised his rifle, Cross sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and crushed it in her gauntlet. The alien howled. She silenced him with a punch that caved in his chestplate. Sergeant, left flank, one of her Marines shouted. A squad of Superian elites charged, their energy shields flaring blue. Cross didn't slow down. She triggered the lance's overload function. The weapon's core detonated in a shockwave that sent bodies flying. Fleetmaster Zira's voice roared over the battlefield, panicked now. Fall back, regroup at the... Another railgun strike silenced him. The troop carrier above Berlin exploded in a fireball, raining molten metal onto the streets. Cross wiped alien blood from her visor. That's 1 city down. Who's next? In orbit, the remaining Superian ships wavered. Their flawless formation, the same one they'd used to conquer a dozen species, was in tatters. Human stealth satellites, hidden for decades, decloaked one by one, their railgun barrels glowing red. Hot, Zira's flagship, now a burning wreck, listed toward Earth's atmosphere. The Fleetmaster's final transmission was a whisper. How did they? Cross-keyed her comm. Welcome to Earth, sir. Enjoy the hospitality. The Marines cheered as the last of the invaders broke and ran. But Cross didn't smile. She looked up at the stars. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The bridge of the USN Atlantica hummed with restrained power. Captain Ryan Blake stood before the main view screen, his reflection staring back at him from the polished black surface of the command console. Behind him, the crew worked in silence, human hands moving across holographic interfaces with lethal precision. The ship itself was a nightmare given form, its adaptive stealth plating drinking in the light, its forbidden dark, matter core pulsing like a sleeping beast. The holograms flickered to life before him. Dozens of them, the entire Galactic Council, their alien faces twisted in shock, outrage, and something new. Fear, Ambassador Krellick's frills flared crimson, his Zephyrian voice trembling. This is madness, Blake. You cannot. Blake didn't let him finish. He tapped a command into his console. The view screen split, showing the Atlantica's main gun powering up, a monstrous barrel of blackened alloy, humming with energy that made the very air vibrate. You banned us from your war games, Blake said, his voice low. Called us primitive, unpredictable. His fingers hovered over the firing command. Let me show you why. Professor Zixel's tentacles coiled tight around her torso. The Octavian tactician had been the Federation's greatest military mind for 3 centuries. Now, her voice was a whisper. Captain, that weapon is ours. Blake finished. He nodded to his weapons officer. Target the moon of Zweifus, 9 uninhabited, no strategic value. A Vorak delegate snarled. You wouldn't dare. Blake's smile was ice. Watch me. He pressed the button. The Oblivion cannon fired for a single, breathless second. Nothing happened. Then light, a beam of pure annihilation lanced across the void, so bright it burned the retinas of every being watching. It struck Cyphus 9's moon dead center. The moon erupted. One moment, it was there, a grey pockmarked sphere. The next, it was gone. Not shattered, not broken, erased. The beam tore through it like a bullet through paper, leaving only expanding dust and the echo of something the universe wasn't meant to see. Silence. The Council's holograms flickered, their faces frozen in horror. Krellick's frills had gone white. Zixel's tentacles hung limp. Blake leaned forward, his shadow stretching across them. That was at 5% power. A Cerelion delegate's floating orbs dimmed. You monsters. Blake's laugh was sharp. No were human. He straightened, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. You thought war was about rules, about honor, about fair fights. His eyes burned. War is about winning. The Atlantica's comms officer spoke up. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Blake didn't look away from the Council. Patch it through. Admiral Graves' face appeared on a secondary screen, a grizzled human with scars that spoke of battles the Federation had never seen. Captain Blake's status. Blake's grin was all teeth. Demonstration successful, sir. Graves nodded. Good. The other fleets are in position, awaiting your orders. The Council stiffened. Other fleets, Krellick croaked. Blake ignored him. Stand by, Admiral. He turned back to the holograms. You have a choice, surrender or burn. Zixel's voice was hollow. You would destroy us? Blake's smile faded. No, we'll save you. He gestured to the view screen, where the remnants of the moon still drifted. The Scourge is coming, and when they do, you'll need monsters like us. Silence stretched. Then, one by one, the Council's holograms bowed. Krellick's was the last. His frills trembled. What do you want? Blake exhaled. A seat at the table. He tapped his console again. The Oblivion cannon powered down with a deep, shuddering groan. And next time, his eyes locked onto the ambassadors. Don't underestimate us. The transmission cut on the bridge of the Atlantica. Ensign Jake Morrison let out a low whistle. Damn, sir, that was cold. Blake sank into his chair, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. No, Ensign. He stared at the stars. That was human. Somewhere, in the dark between galaxies, something ancient and hungry stirred, and for the first time in millennia, the universe held its breath. The holographic chamber of the Galactic Senate hummed with uneasy silence, where once the air had been filled with the arrogant chatter of 1,000 species. Now only the faint crackle of energy fields disturbed the quiet. Professor Zixel's tentacles twitched as she stared at the revised constitution, floating in the center of the room, Earth's sigil now emblazoned at the top, the human fist, and Star's emblem casting a long shadow over the older Federation symbols. Ambassador Krellick's chitinous plates rattled as he stepped forward, his once proud posture now hunched. This is unprecedented, he muttered, mandibles clicking nervously. Captain Blake's image flickered into existence beside the document, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. No, he corrected, this is inevitable. Across the chamber, the Cerelion delegation's floating orbs darted between the humans and their own trembling leaders. Scholar Yithlix, who had once mocked humanity's primitive tactics, now clutched a data slate filled with human war doctrine like a lifeline. You planned this, he whispered, from the beginning. Blake didn't deny it. Morrison leaned back in his pilot's chair aboard the USN Atlantica, spinning a coin across his knuckles. The metallic glint caught the dim light of the bridge as he smirked. Told you they'd learn. The chamber erupted, not in protest, but in pleading. The Vorak Fleetmaster, his once gleaming silver armor now scuffed and dented from the siege of Sol, slammed a fist onto the table. You knew the Scourge were coming. You let us weaken ourselves against you. Sergeant Ava Cross, standing at Blake's side in full-powered armor, snorted. No, we showed you how to fight them. A holographic replay flickered to life. The Scourge Armada, a writhing mass of biomechanical horrors, tearing through the outer colonies. Then the counterattack. Human-designed torpedoes, guided by Prometheus AI, striking with surgical precision, Federation ships, finally breaking formation, using human hit and run tactics to cripple the Scourge motherships. Professor Zixel's voice was barely audible. You used us. Blake's gaze didn't waver. We saved you. The room fell silent again. Morrison flipped his coin one last time, catching it with a snap. Funny thing about humans, he mused. We don't need to be the strongest, just smarter. Krellick's antennae drooped. And now, Blake turned toward the viewing port, where Earth hung serene against the stars. Now, he said, you learn. The revised constitution pulsed with light as the final amendments locked into place. Human-designed defense grids would protect every core world. Federation officers would train under human tacticians. And for the first time in centuries, the Scourge were losing. Yithlix floated forward, his orbs dim with shame. We underestimated you, Cross chuckled, her armor's servos whining as she crossed her arms. Yeah, everybody does. Outside, the Atlantica's dark. Matter cannons hummed, a quiet promise to any who might forget. The galaxy had changed, and humanity was just getting started.